Welcome to our iDS Talks podcast. Once again, it's Transatlantic Tea Time with my colleagues, Dan Rupprecht and Tim Latulippe. Gentlemen, good afternoon.
Good
Hi,
afternoon.
I use the term gentleman loosely, but that's only because I notice by my very good hearing that you've got some skateboarders in the background, and we know that all skateboarders are bad news, which probably, Tim, you were a skateboarder as a youth, weren't you?
Yeah, you hit that nail on the head. And I probably wasn't any better than these kids sort of hopping around. We were just talking about that, actually. It's good to see it's still a thing, though. I think yo-yos will be back next before we know it.
I want to go old school jacks. I want to go to the jacks where you go from onesies to the tensies. Anyway, well, good to see you guys. First, I've got to ask. It looks like you are in the same location. True or false?
At a socially distanced, at a socially acceptable distance to our restraining orders against each other.
Yeah, I have to be 10 meters away from Dan all of the time, which I enjoy.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to have in place.
Very, very frightening. So we're shooting this earlier in the day for here on the East Coast. So I feel good that we've called this our Transatlantic Tea Time, which makes a lot of sense for you guys since you're 5 hours ahead usually. But I actually have my cup here with me, so I feel a little more legit today.
There you go.
Let's start with this question because we just came off of Memorial Day here in the U.S., which actually was a bank holiday over there for you guys. I should know the answer to this, but please, what is the deal with bank holidays? They make no sense to me. So can you give me the quick overview on bank holiday?
I'll take the first stab, and I'll let Dan fill in the pieces. But essentially, I mean, a bank holiday is just an English colloquialism for a federal sort of national holiday. It's when you're not on, your bank's closed, your post office is closed, most offices are closed unless you're a restaurant or a pub or that kind of thing. And there's it varies by year, but there's usually 7 or 8 of them every year that are observed or kind of practiced. And in the U.S., you guys have more like 9 of them. So there's actually more of them in the U.S. So for you naysayers, you guys actually have more time off in the U.S. But the bank holiday we just had isn't actually affiliated with anything. I think it might have some old Pentecostal religious thing associated with it, but it's actually just a day off to enjoy the sun. It's the first time we've actually seen the sun in probably 5 months, which is why we're all kind of basting in it right now. But I hope you had a good Memorial Day back in the States, Jonathan.
The weather here on the East Coast was really not good. It was, in the 50s and raining much of the weekend until maybe Monday afternoon. Although, Tim, I did get to go to Lime Rock Racetrack, and I saw the Trans Am Series race. So that was always fun. It's a great little track, 1.5 miles. That's what I had to do when there was no F1 to watch on Sunday, so I had to.
I watched the Le Mans '66 over the weekend, the movie, which is a great movie, by the way. You should check it out.
Oh, I'll have to. All right, so we've determined you're at the same location, socially distanced or court-ordered distanced away from each other. We'll let the viewers decide. But where are you? What building is this that the two of you are so gloriously standing in front of?
So right behind us is one of the most iconic buildings in London, and one of my favorite buildings in the world, actually, which is St. Paul's Cathedral. And it's very central in London. It's a couple of blocks away from our offices, so it's a great stroll and have lunch and meet with friends and clients and sort of get outside and experience London. And if you don't know St. Paul's, I mean, St. Paul's is an iconic church here in the UK and in London proper. And there's actually some interesting stories behind it as well. I mean, there were laws in place that I think still remain in place where certain areas of London cannot be built higher than the dome at St. Paul's Cathedral. And the idea is that you should be able to see St. Paul's as a landmark coming from all directions as you enter into London. It's quite historical. It's been in place for hundreds of years, and again, it's always seen as this sort of central iconic location for the city. And one of my favorite stories around it is actually, if you've ever heard of the saying "steal from Peter to pay Paul." Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
Taking from Peter to pay Paul. That actually is derived from the building of St. Paul's Cathedral. There's another cathedral closer to the Parliament called St. Peter's, and they would steal from the gatherings at St. Peter's to pay for Paul, to build St. Paul's. So that's where the saying "take from Peter to pay for Paul" comes from.
Interesting. Look at that.
I also just showed you a bit. I couldn't flip it easily, but you can see one of my old office buildings, that cheese grater. You can Google it if you want, but these buildings have very funny shapes. One, because it's kind of an iconic London thing to do, have sort of ugly looking skyscrapers. But
they can't build a normal building here.
No, they can't. But I'm also told that they have to be designed that way, so you can still see St. Paul's Cathedral from certain directions. You can't engineer something that obstructs the view.
Interesting. I did not know that. There are definitely cities that will have rules that, this building has to be the highest, cannot be taller than that.
Well, it's like that in DC, right? You can't be taller than the Capitol or taller than the Washington Monument, something like that in DC.
I don't know, Dan. I'm in Jersey. We do whatever we want in Jersey. Come on.
Yeah.
So let's. I feel like every time we talk, I get the mandatory COVID update from you guys, and so curious in terms of restrictions being lifted. I mean, there are a lot of people out right now. Neither of you are wearing masks, but that's kind of helpful because it would be a little difficult to hear you through a mask. But what's the latest over there?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Dan chime in, but things are on the up and up. I mean, not dissimilar to, I assume, select states in the U.S. where, incidents are quite low and vaccinations quite high. It's just a good tempo around here. You can see a lot of people kind of being comfortable but cautious. I wouldn't say it's anywhere near over. We're still going to have to be cautious through the summer, but we've got a fantastic vaccine program, as you probably see in the news and hear from us. So it's making our commitment to returning to a version of normal much more pronounced. We certainly feel good about it. We wear masks kind of when we're confined in small spaces in the office, or you're in a taxi or whatever. But if you're out and about, it's deemed quite safe to not have to cover up. Dan, what are your thoughts on how this is all going?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going in the right direction. I mean, the good thing is that everyone is being sort of tentative and sort of leaving their basements and very cautious. Everyone's staying sort of in and amongst their known groups. Even for us, we are meeting a few clients and a few friends, but it's very selective at this stage. It's people that you know really well and are sort of part of your bubble to begin with. So I think the good thing is that even though we're reaching some level of normalcy, it is a very tentative, cautious normalcy, which is really what you want at this stage. We don't want to turn back the clocks on all the progress we've had over the last several months. So everybody is really almost scared straight. We're going to do it the right way because we know what could go wrong very quickly. So that's the good news is that we're out and we're about, but we're also very careful.
Good. I do have to say though, it sounds like you're in a hurricane. Your wind, you look great in the wind, but I expect to see Tim holding onto a signpost with his legs in the.
We're sort of in a draft, if you can see behind. So off in the distance there, you can see the Tate Museum, and that is essentially the Thames River over there. So they've created this corridor where you can see, again, St. Paul's Cathedral from one of the most famous museums in all the world, the Tate. And again, it creates a bit of a draft coming through here. So yeah, I was muting myself a little bit because I started hearing a bit of that, of the backdraft.
Well, and we the three of us know our production team would tell us we're breaking all of the video and audio rules by doing this outdoors, but we don't like to
but it's
follow rules.
authentic. It's raw. It's raw
We
and
don't need,
authentic,
that's
isn't
right.
it? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I think that it's we call it organic. That's the industry lingo on that one. It's organic. And the best part, by the way, of what Tim said is, you know, some we're getting back to normal. And I would argue that there are people out there who would say none of the three of us were ever normal. So if this helps me get closer to normal, not so bad.
That's fair. That's fair.
So on this topic of you know, normal, you know, it's been 15 months since we've really met with clients, met with prospects, gone to conferences, participated in speaking events and whatnot. I do know, you know, they've been doing it virtually, but as you know, we start to emerge, we're going to see more and more, I think, hybrid models or in-person models. But I was curious to find out from the two of you, are you seeing the same thing over there, and are you participating in any upcoming such events?
Yeah, I'll go first. We are definitely seeing the same sort of uptick in sort of these hybrid sort of conferences or events or roundtables that still remain virtual. I think you know there's no real rush to get into a small room with a bunch of people, or even a conference hall with a bunch of people. So I think in the near future we're still seeing a bit of the hybrid model, if not more leaning to the webcast kind of virtual events that we've seen over the last year. We continue to participate on many of these and do so with quite a bit of gusto. We feel that we really have some important topics to cover, and in particular as we work to move out of the remote world that we've been in, or try and figure out best ways to combine the remote world and the office world that we're now moving back into. We find it's important for us in particular at iDS to really showcase how we've sort of been doing this all along. It's just an extension of our best business practice that goes back years, not just during a time of pandemic. And because of that, there are certain ways that we operate that lend themselves to this more remote work. And we're actually joining an event coming up in a couple of weeks, in July 16th, with Alternative Insights. And we'll be discussing sort of information governance, and really how well you know your environments in a sort of post-COVID environment. We all spend a lot of effort trying to get to grips with our data and how it's stored in sort of the four corners of our network and our network environments at the corporation. But now that people are working from home, and they're going to be doing so for the foreseeable future, how do we sort of incorporate that remote governance aspect of it? How do we collect from those from those dispersed areas? And then in particular, we're sort of focusing in on sort of the real aspects of it, or the reality of it, when certain issues arise, such as data subject access requests, or DSARs, which are likely to become more prevalent over the coming months. How do we operate in that world? So it should be a great event, one that we're speaking on with a couple other panelists, and very excited about. And I also know Tim's speaking at a very reputable event coming up. I'll kick it over to you, Tim, to cover that.
Yeah, sure. I was going to add to that. Thanks, Dan. It's beyond me why they invited me to speak at this particular event, given that it holds such high esteem in the market. But it's the Employment Lawyers Association, or ELA, and most of our friends and contacts and their networks are likely ELA members. So we will see some familiar faces. That too will be webcasts. It's too early in the year to kind of go back to a proper sit indoors, have a sandwich and coffee table outside the theater sort of arrangement. But I think because of that, more people will be able to attend some of these events, because they won't have to factor in the getting up early, getting on the train, time away from their office. There's a lot of benefits to it. But this particular event is on the 9th of June, and a lot of the topics are rather similar to what Dan was just talking about. The sort of how do we identify and mitigate the risk now that we've seen more of it, let's say, over the last 15 months? What issues are sort of present and will be continually painful or challenging as people continue to work from home or work from anywhere? As some people are saying it, some people might want to go to a cafe or shared workspace rather than all the way into an office. But the fact remains that companies feel a little bit of anxiety and stress that their assets and their information are effectively on laptops and tablets outside of their building. They're in people's living rooms, they're all over the place. So there's certainly an information governance component to it, cybersecurity, and the bits that Robert Kirtley's group sort of consult on are definitely of critical importance moving forward. And what really sort of concerns some of the employment law practitioners, and the ELA group will largely be external lawyers, whereas the alternative events piece later in June is going to be mostly an in-house contingent. So similar topics, different audiences, but a lot of their concerns kind of marry up in the fact that they're worried about employee monitoring, whether they're doing it intentionally or unintentionally. This sort of work from home, keeping everyone synced up with Teams and webcams on all the time. Beyond the sort of KPI measuring of employees, are they being watched in a way that violates their rights, depending on the jurisdiction they're in? If something pops off, there's a legitimate need for an investigation into X, Y, or Z. Is it the theft of data, breach of covenants? Poaching of staff, things that contentious employment lawyers tend to deal with. How much more painful is this while people are in their flats or their homes versus being in the office to deal with it? And the answer is it's always going to be more difficult. But it's good to have the community talk it out, because we as a team have dealt with this for years pre-pandemic, just for economic purposes of economic sensibilities, just not putting people on trains and planes to go get a phone or a laptop collected. So we've had workarounds for this kind of thing for some time. And it's good to sort of bring that experience to bear in the newer framework.
Let me ask you guys this question. Do you anticipate additional challenges since people are working from home? Perhaps you're working on your laptop and your son or daughter or spouse, significant other, friend comes over and says, "Oh, I just need to log on for 5 minutes. I just need to go do this for 5 minutes." And now your work device is being used not just for a personal reason, perhaps within your family, but even outside of your family. Is this something that employers are thinking about, should be thinking about, something that's going to be addressed at these conferences?
Yeah, absolutely. All of the above. I think that we've spoken about this ad nauseum for years when advising corporates on best practices and bring your own device policies. Have always been a source of contention in large scale investigations, and those lines have been blurring for quite some time now. I mean, I know, in particular on some of the large-scale investigations that I've worked on over the years in the antitrust competition space, a lot of activity, especially in sort of cartel or abuse cases, have happened in chat rooms and through your handheld devices. And the reality is for a number of years now, people have been using their smartphones for both work and personal sort of interactions and ways of communication. So the expectation has for some time started to lean in the direction of the authorities and regulators saying, well, we have a right to the information that's on that device because you've used it for work purposes, or you've used it as a tool to engage in these types of activities, and as such they become part of the purview of our investigation. I think what we're seeing now with the remote world and people working at home will be an extension of that same view. The reality is that we may have personal computers that we log into very quickly for work. We may have iPads and different devices that we're sort of engaging, perhaps in a WhatsApp room or in some way with people at work or colleagues at competitor establishments. Teams, Zoom, all these various ways of communication that have become part of our new normal are going to be within the scope of many an investigation. So I think yeah, it's all going to be part of those sorts of discussions. And when we're talking about information governance in a post-COVID world, I think that's really what we're actually saying. We have to consider all of these other environments that we may have been able to separate at one point, but those worlds are colliding.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I'm going to give you guys 2 bits of homework for our, before our next Transatlantic Tea Time. The first is, I think, Tim, you're going to be participating in the first conference. So sharing the top 3 takeaways that you came away with. And I used number 3. I had a CEO I used to work with. He believed in the number or power of 3. So if you went on a meeting, you should really have no more than 3 agenda items. If you're going to have a slide, try not to have anything more than 3 bullet points. So 3 top takeaways. And Dan, for you, I know you're a huge skateboarder and you're a big fan of the Ollie. So I think that you need to work on your Ollie skills. Maybe you can demonstrate some of those for us as well.
So I went on a bike ride with my daughters. Well, almost all we're always going out on these bike rides, and I decided to show off to my 7-year-old and see if I could still pull off a wheelie and try and sort of do a wheelie down the road a little bit. Of course, I'm 47 years old and should be doing nothing of the sort, and proceeded to essentially land the bike and then go over the bars and land straight on basically on my face. To which my 7-year-old just started bawling, crying because she thought I killed myself. So I'm pretty sure that the ollies are. I'm pretty sure that the ollies might not happen, but I'll do my best.
The only upsetting thing about that story is that it isn't on video.
That would have been classic. That would have been classic. Well, gents, I appreciate you taking the time this afternoon for you, this morning for me, for us to have another one of our Transatlantic Tea Times. For those of you who enjoyed today's conversation, please go to YouTube under the iDS Talks channel and subscribe, or go to your favorite location for podcasts and subscribe to our iDS Talks podcast, where we not only get to talk to these 2 folks, but we talk to a lot of other interesting people. So again, guys, enjoy that great weather. I'm kind of jealous, but seeing how it's like one of 4 days where it's not raining over there, I figure you deserve it.
You nailed it. You nailed it. Oh, I wore this today. I wore this today for you, John.
This is our summer.
Very nice. Glad to see you both are wearing some of our IDS.
That's right. Representing.
The puck. You're right. The puck is everywhere. All right, guys. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.